Part 16, Chapter 31. Hale was 10 feet from the ground when he decided to jump. The captain stopped, tucked the gun inside his jumpsuit, and let the unsuspecting Terry shimmy out from under him. Then, a moment before the second Humvee passed by, he pushed off the cliff. "My God!" Terry screamed as he fell past her. Hale had chosen the second Humvee because if he'd jumped at the first and missed, he'd have rolled off the roof and under the wheels of the second. Hale landed facing the passenger side, squatting, along with the rocks he'd been holding onto. When Kelly swerved, Hale was thrown towards the side and would have gone off, head first, if Terry hadn't landed beside him. She pulled him back by the collar of his flight suit, and he landed on his butt. "You're insane!" she screamed. Hale didn't argue. The Humvee swerved back towards the cliff. Terry lay flat, and Hale got on his hands and knees, spreading them wide as he took out the gun. But before he could make his way to the driver's side, bullets punched up through the roof. The gunfire cut a connect-the-dots line between Hale and Terry, at one point missing her right elbow by an inch. Terry pulled her arms in and was heads up enough to get onto her side, making herself less of a target. A second volley followed, directly behind Hale. As he scurried forward to escape the attack, the driver swerved again. Momentarily off balance, Hale thumped to his side on the edge of the vehicle, lost his gun and his balance, and skidded off the Humvee. "Terry!" he shouted, biting off her name as he hit the ground, hard. A bullet split a rock on the cliff just above his head, raining particles into his eyes and mouth. Spitting out pieces of rock, he got to his feet and ran after the Humvee. "Terry!" he yelled as bullets whizzed past. "Terry!" Suddenly, the second Humvee stopped. Terry slid across the roof but didn't fall. The guns stopped firing. And then the wheels spun madly in reverse, churning up cyclones of dirt, and the Humvee rocketed towards Hale. He threw himself against the cliff, fingertips bleeding, muscles cramping. He climbed, dug in with his hands, and pulled up his legs so they were just above roof level as the rear fender grazed the cliff. The Humvee bounced off, rocking Terry, who leaped on the gun as though it were a fumbled football, to keep it from flying off. Hale's grip weakened. He dropped when the Humvee passed, and then he was between both vehicles. The one in the front was waiting, blocking his escape, its brake lights aglow like the bloody mouths of a many-headed Cerberus guarding the gates of hell. The second Humvee stopped with a jolt less than 10 feet away. It idled, flashed its lights, then waited. Hale rose painfully, though the ache in his limbs was nothing compared to the hurt in his heart. The sun threw a red light on the faces of the men in the front seat, and he saw Deakins in the passenger seat. He was talking into the car's radio. Was that a smile or a grimace on the face of his long-time friend? He wondered. Hale stood there, transfixed by the face of the Gorgon, unable to move even as he heard the engine rev and the tires spin behind him. He wasn't sure he wanted to move. If you couldn't trust your flying partner, your cockpit brother, a man who was as close to you as your own damn skin, what was there to live for? "Here!" Terry shouted. Hale snapped from his sullen reflection. Something slid across the Humvee roof and flew at him, spinning barrel butt. It was the gun. The sunlight also lit the ranger's face. It was anxious, dirty, more golden than red. It was also imploring, urging him to move. All of this registered in the time between heartbeats. Hale bolted forward and caught the gun, stole a quick look behind him, and then leaped up as the Humvee was about to mash him. The tank-like vehicle struck him on the back while he was still in the air. He was rattled hard, but he landed on the rear fender, facing backward, and managed to stay there by grabbing the flat metal sideguard on the left. Hale raised the gun. The rear Humvee was 9 feet away. 8 feet. 7. The captain fired, and Baker screamed, then ducked. Deakins didn't move as the bullets crashed against the windshield, directly in front of his face. Bulletproof! Hale swore. The Humvee that Hale was on stopped close enough to jump a dead battery. Hale hopped off and ducked between the vehicles. Deakins cranked down his window. Baker climbed from the first Humvee, an assault weapon tucked under his arm. He stepped out and aimed the gun at the roof. At Terry.
"Give it up, partner!"
Deakins shouted.
"Now! Before we lobotomize Boo Boo Bear!"
Silence. Baker edged towards the front of the vehicle. He saw nothing, made an impatient sound, continued forward.
"I'll give you the count of 3, Captain,"
Deakins said.
1, 2,
3, Hale said from behind Baker. Baker didn't fire. He stood there as Hale, his chest filthy from having crawled around the Humvee, rose behind him. Baker smirked.
"Seems we got ourselves a little standoff."
Hale smirked back.
"Not really."
Hale simultaneously fired 2 rounds into the back of Baker's head and smacked the barrel of the assault weapon down with his free hand. Kicking the dead thug forward, he wrested the gun from him, yelled for Terry, and ran around to the passenger side. Terry scampered from the roof to the hood to the open driver's side door of the lead Humvee before Deakins or Baker could turn a weapon on her. Before she even shut the door, she'd shifted gears, pushed down on the gas pedal, and was already tearing along the old trail. "You killed him!" Terry gasped. "I don't think he was entirely clear on how standoffs work. Anyway, he wouldn't have hesitated to waste you." Terry looked in the rearview mirror as the second Humvee roared defiantly and started after them. "Will they shoot?" she asked. "These things are too well armored," Hale said. "And you saw about the windshields. Besides," he grinned, "we've got the nukes." Terry's eyes became huge as she hazarded a quick look back. "Holy shit!" "Don't worry," Hale said. "They're not going to explode no matter what happens." "Are you sure about that?" "Totally," he said. "But they could get damaged, and Deakins doesn't want that. So he'll treat us gingerly." Terry's eyes grew a little smaller, but not by much. "I'm chaperoning nuclear bombs. This is crazy." "What's life without some excitement?" "Relaxing," she said. "We'll all get to relax soon enough," Hale said. "The long, long dirt nap." "Great," she said. "I'm riding with Aristotle." "Just sharing some of my accumulated wisdom," Hale said. "Don't," she said. "It's depressing. Think happy thoughts, like in Peter Pan." "I guess that's why I used to box with Deke," Hale said, more to himself than to Terry. "Even though I got the crap beat out of me. It's better to feel something, even if it's a fist." He slipped a thumb and index finger into his vest pocket and pulled out his sunglasses. The dark lenses fell out in small pieces. He tossed the golden frames to the floor and brushed the pieces off his lap. "I just bought those too," Hale said. "A flyer without his shades. Now I'm really defenseless." He looked back, squinting into the sun to make sure Deakins wasn't gaining on them. "How are we doing?" Terry asked as she deftly cornered a close turn to the cliff. "You know these roads better than they do," he said. "But we still have to lose them. How long until we reach the river?" "About 3 miles," she said. But the way this road goes, there's nowhere to hide. They'll see every turn we make. That won't help them if they can't follow us, Hale said. Terry stole a look at him. What do you mean? The pilot climbed over the back of the seat. He crouched beside the bombs. I'm going to whip up a little distraction. Oh, good idea, Terry said. Set off one of the nukes. That'll get 'em. That's not what I'm doing, Hale said. He poked through the equipment in the rear of the Humvee. Deke would have been well prepared, which means... Aha! With a triumphant flourish, Hale unscrewed the wing nuts from a bracket and lifted a plastic container of gasoline. He set it beside his foot. There was a toolbox in a well beside the bracket, and he opened it. Round 1, Deke, he said as he pulled a roll of gaffer's tape from the box. Round 2, us. Round 3, us? Terry said hopefully. Us, Hale said as he unwound a foot of tape and tore it with his teeth. With a little help from Vyacheslav Mikhailovich Skryabin. Who? Terry asked as she rounded another turn, this time more carefully. Hale took a flare from the toolkit and taped it to the side of the can. Skryabin, a.k.a. Molotov, he said. The cocktail guy. Geez, said Terry. I didn't think they taught things like that in survival school. They don't, he said. I got this from a Soy Hark movie. A what? A Chinese gangster film, he said. We move in different cultural circles, she said. Hale took a moment to double-check his handiwork. Well, it isn't an official Molotov cocktail, but the results should be the same. Hale picked his way around the nukes to the back of the Humvee, then popped the back hatch. Slow down, he said. She let up slightly on the gas. Hale ignited the flare and leaned out the back. Slower, he yelled as the wind tore at the flame. Almost stop. Terry gradually pressed on the brake pedal. The Humvee slowed amid a swirl of dust, and Hale leaned out. He laid the container on the trail. Now go! He shouted. Fast! Dirt and grass spit out from under the wheels as Terry took off. Chapter 32. Kelly was watching the Humvee. He rounded the curve, and when the enemy slowed down, he sped up. Ha! Gotcha, he said as he tore down the straightaway. Deakins wasn't looking at the Humvee. He saw the flare, saw the bubbling, melting plastic beneath it, and saw the gasoline pour from a smoky hole in the container's side. Stop! He yelled. Kelly didn't respond soon enough. When he finally smashed down on the brake, the Humvee skidded to a stop just yards from the container, and everyone but Deakins bailed out as it exploded. A geyser of fire shot up nearly 20 feet and came down in waves, burning the scrub grass, charring the face of the cliff, and engulfing the hood of the Humvee. Inside, Deakins coolly climbed into the back seat, reached into the rear, and grabbed the fire extinguisher. He kicked open the passenger side door, his only display of anger, walked around front, and quietly and efficiently doused the flame. When there was nothing but foam and white smoke on the front of the Humvee, the others ventured back, Pritchett ahead of Kelly and Johnson. Well, I can't wait to see how this fits into your plan, Pritchett said. Then he added for good measure, Commander-in-Chief, sir. Deakin's cool veneer burned off like the coat of paint on the Humvee's hood. He fixed Pritchett with a white-hot stare and stalked towards him. He held the extinguisher by its operating lever. The red metal canister swung dangerously at his side. Pritchett didn't retreat. Deakins stopped when they were nearly belt-buckled to suspenders clip. "Did you happen to notice what Hale did to Baker?" Deakins asked. Pritchett said, "It was difficult to miss. Likewise that bug bomb he cooked up for us." Deakins moved even closer. Now they were nose to nose. "That's very true, Mr. Pritchett. So's this. If you tweak me again just one more time, you're going to beg to have your chips cashed that quick. You got that?" Pritchett didn't answer, but he shrank back slightly, which was all the answer Deakins needed. The Major threw the fire extinguisher at the cliff. The cylinder cracked and hissed as the remaining soda acid lathered out. "Kelly," Deakins said, "see if the bullshit's true, if these things really can drive through hell and back." Kelly ran over to the Humvee. He opened the hot door with his foot, slid in, put it into forward and reverse, and then tested the gas and brake.
"It works,"
he said. "Then let's get our toys back," Deakins growled. As he walked towards the Humvee, Johnson fell in beside him. "Don't you think we ought to do something about Baker?" Johnson asked. "Yeah," Deakins said as he climbed into the passenger side. "Fill out the forms for sainthood and make him the patron saint of all the dumb shit assholes who let second-rate wusses sneak up behind them and blow their friggin' brains out. Now get in." Deakins slammed the door. After giving Pritchett and the startled Johnson enough time to get in but not close the doors, he motioned for Kelly to move out. Despite what had just happened, Deakins was angry but not unduly concerned. He knew Hale almost as well as he knew the dialogue from his favorite film, The Wild Bunch. He knew just what the guy would try, every tired punch, and he also knew how flustered Hale would get when a few of them failed to connect. And then he was going to enjoy reeling the big, dumb fish in. And when he did, their history together notwithstanding, he was going to scale him alive for this inconvenience.